In this tutorial, we're going to have a look at some of the basic operations involved in working with multiple tracks within Cubase. So I have here a project which I've constructed already, which consists of two audio tracks here and two VST instrument tracks. So on this track I've imported an existing sound file of some soundscape. It's a little recording from inside a city. This track has a fragment of a speech by John F. Kennedy, and these two instrument tracks are both connected to different VST instruments. So if I play the whole thing, it's about 15 seconds long, it sounds like this.
This nation was founded by men of many nations and backgrounds. It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal, and that the rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened.
Okay, so as I select each track in the track list, I can see the settings for that track in the inspector over here. So as I move through the tracks, I'm viewing the settings in the inspector for the track which is currently selected. Obviously there are some differences between the audio track and the VST instrument track, but there are also a lot of settings that every kind of track will have in common. For example, every track has a mute control and a solo control. The mute control will temporarily mute a track from the mix. So in this way I can remove JFK's voice from the mix when I hit the mute button.
This nation was founded by men of many nations.
So now we're no longer hearing his voice, and I unmute.
Every man are diminished.
It comes back.
When the rights of one man are threatened.
The solo control is more or less the opposite of the mute control, in that when I solo a track, it will remove all of the other tracks from the mix. So in this way, I can listen only to JFK's voice by clicking solo.
This nation was founded by men of many nations and backgrounds.
An interesting feature of the solo functionality is that it will follow the selected track. In other words, at the moment I have this track selected and soloed, but if I then select this track, notice now that it's this track which is soloed and this track has become muted like all of the others. So in this way I can play you what each of the tracks in this mix sounds like individually. There's the soundscape. Move to JFK.
It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal.
And this one is a synth. And finally, in the inspector, each track also has a volume setting and a pan setting. The volume setting is used, if I solo this track I can show you, the volume setting is used to determine the volume of that particular track within the mix. So I can turn that right down and up again. The pan setting is used to determine the track's position within stereo mix. If I have the pan control set fully to the left, then the sound will only emanate from the left loudspeaker or the left headphone. In the middle, it will emanate equally from both, and to the right, we're only going to hear that track from the right-hand loudspeaker. I'll demonstrate that on JFK's voice, starting in the left.
This nation was founded by men of many nations and backgrounds.
Moving to the middle.
It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal.
And to the right.
And that the rights of every man are diminished.
So by adjusting the volume and pan settings for each of the tracks individually, we can thus balance each track in the mix as a whole and decide on the position of each track individually within the stereo field. So far, we've been modifying the volume, pan, mute and solo settings using the inspector, and this allows us to change the settings of one track at a time. Instead, if we have a look at the mixer window by going to the Devices menu and choosing Mixer, this gives us access to those settings and lots more, but it will give us access to the settings that we've been looking at so far for every track simultaneously. So here we can see we have the same track names here as we do for each track here. So we've got Soundscape on the left corresponding with this track here. And you notice when you begin to work with multiple windows in Cubase, you'll quite often find that what has just happened now happens to you, which is that the window that you're working with disappears. I can get the mixer back by once again going to the Devices menu and choosing Mixer, or note using the F3 keyboard shortcut. So when the mixer disappears, I can get it back with F3. Now notice that I have a Soundscape track here corresponding with this channel on the mixer, and the same with JFK. If I select it here, it will become selected here, and the same with both of the VST instrument tracks. The volume setting here on the mixer corresponds with the volume setting of that track, which you can now see moving in the inspector up and down, and the same with the pan control. As I move the pan control in the mixer, we can see the corresponding pan control in the inspector moving as well. So with the mixer and with the inspector, you're seeing some of the same settings in two different places. The mixer has a lot more functionality which you don't get in the inspector, which we will look at in a further tutorial. One thing that we will look at now in the mixer window is the master volume, and this controls the overall volume of the mix. So far we've looked at adjusting the volumes of each of the individual tracks. Well, the master volume here allows us to modify the overall volume of the entire mix. So as I play back and adjust this, the balance of the tracks will remain the same, the pan settings of each individual track will remain the same, and we'll be modifying the overall volume, like so.
This nation was founded by men of many nations.
Make the whole mix quieter.
It was founded on the principle.
And louder again.
And that the rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened.
When we're considering the level of the overall mix, it's important that we avoid output clipping, which I will try to demonstrate now.
This nation was founded by men of many nations and backgrounds. It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal.
Notice that as I was playing back the mix there, the clip light here and also on the transport bar was lighting up, and we were getting some nasty distortion on the output. If that happens, what we need to do is reduce the level of the overall mix so as to avoid that clipping and distortion. And what you'll find usually is that the more tracks you have, you may find yourself having to bring down the master volume in order to avoid output clipping. What you can also do, of course, is bring down the levels of all of the tracks individually.